is standing right here. Mr. David Hope. We're here this afternoon to pay tribute to a great principle, the principle that lies at the core of the Second Amendment, the principle that is the basis for the right to arms in the Colorado Constitution. It's what the men and women who fought and died to protect in places like Saratoga in 1777, at Sword Beach in 1944, in Mississippi in 1963. It's what the right to bear arms is all about. Legitimate sports. That's right. The gun control lobby has it all figured out. Although the United States Constitution talks about the security of a free state, and although the Colorado Constitution talks about the protection of home, person, and property, we all know that the right to bear arms is really about legitimate sports. In fact, all of the Constitution is about sports. The freedom of the press guarantees you the right to read articles about the Colorado Rockies baseball team, no matter how controversial those articles are. The freedom of religion guarantees your right to pray for the Rockies bullpen, and some days they really need it. And the constitutional protection against the taking of property without due process means the government can't take your Rockies season tickets away. Unless, of course, you're accused of a drug offense, in which case the forfeiture laws trump the Constitution. Now, it's true that some radical groups like the NRA will tell you that the Second Amendment's right of the people to keep and bear arms actually protects the right of people to keep and bear arms. But that's just typical of their backwards thinking. All reasonable people know that the right of the people to bear arms means the right of the National Guard to bear arms. Likewise, when the First Amendment talks about the right of the people peaceably to assemble, what it means is the right of the National Guard to hold meetings whenever it needs to. All these things I've said sound like jokes, but they're not. Regarding the right to arms, they're the constitutional interpretation of the United States Department of Justice, of the city government of Denver, and of a whole bunch of other people who want to take your guns away. They don't confiscate guns in Russia anymore, but they do in New York City, they do in New Jersey, they do in California, and they want to in Colorado. The people who want only the government to have guns have never been bolder. The Brady Bill, as they say, is only the very first step. They have a bill in Congress right now to outlaw every semi-automatic firearm in the United States. They have a bill in Congress right now to confiscate every handgun in the United States. They have a bill in Congress right now to outlaw all 22, 25, and 9mm ammunition. And they have a bill in Congress right now to repeal the Second Amendment. Do you think that it can't happen here? That no matter what the government does to the people in New Jersey, you're safe in Colorado? Well, look at what they've already done to our rights in Colorado. Even in Connecticut, you can get a permit to carry a handgun for protection, but not in Denver. Even in Michigan, they have a law forbidding city and county governments to enact separate and additional gun controls, but not in Colorado. And even in Rhode Island, the government is forbidden to register guns, but in Denver, the police chief has a list of every gun sold and who it was sold to. Are these controls enough? Well, not to District Attorney Norm Early, who supports the confiscation of all handguns. Not to the bureaucrats in the mayor's office who think that gang members are going to give up their guns for Nuggets tickets. If the mayor's office of Denver spent half as much time trying to fix the 911 system as it did on this failed gun buyback, Denver might actually become a little bit safer. The people who want to take your guns away tell you that you'll be safer when only the government has guns. Tell that to the students who were murdered at Tiananmen Square by the Chinese government. Tell that to the survivors of Auschwitz and Treblinka. Tell that to the thousands of black people murdered by racist sheriffs in the Jim Crow South. Tell that to the families of the students murdered at Kent State. Tell that to the descendants of the coal miners murdered in Ludlow, Colorado by the Colorado National Guard. And tell that to Rodney King. The Texas Revolution against Mexico began when the Mexican dictator Santa Anna told the citizens of a small town that he wanted their assault weapon, which happened to be a small cannon. They said, "Come and take it." To the bureaucrats who want nobody except their uniformed employees to have guns, those words sound barbaric and frightening. But such words are the essence of civilization itself, because they stand for the principle that all human beings have certain inalienable rights which no government can take away. Listen to the words of James Madison's friend Tench Coates as he explained the new Constitution to the American people. The powers of the sword are in the hands of the yeomanry of America from 16 to 60. The militia of these free commonwealths, entitled and accustomed to their arms, when compared with any possible army, must be tremendous and irresistible. Who are the militia? Are they not ourselves? Congress have no power to disarm the militia. Their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of an American. The unlimited power of the sword is not in the hands of either the federal or state governments, but where I trust in God, it will ever remain in the hands of the people. "218 years ago, Paul Revere and Charles Dawes set out to warn the people that the British are coming. Today, Ken Hamblin and Neil Smith and some other folks and I are here to shout that same warning: the bureaucrats are coming. But what changed the course of history wasn't Paul Revere or Charles Dawes. What changed the course of history was when hundreds of anonymous Americans at Lexington and Concord heard those warnings and said, "I'm tired, I'm scared, and I'm going to fight." And when the greatest imperial army in the world marched up to the Concord Bridge to take away the guns of the American people didn't waver. They stood firm, and on that Concord Bridge, they fired the shot heard round the world. It was the gun-confiscating British redcoats who panicked and ran, and it was the ordinary people, whom the British had contemptuously called the rabble in arms, who pursued those redcoats and defeated the evil empire. The course of American history does not lie in my hands or in the hands of Ken or Neil or the NRA. All we can do is warn you of the gathering storm. Whether Handgun Control Incorporated achieves in 1993 what the British could not in 1775 will be up to you, not up to today's speakers. Will you take up your pens and your picket signs as the men of Concord took up their firearms? Will you work as hard as did the men of Concord, knowing that if you falter, you will relinquish not only your own freedom, but the freedom of future generations? Will you work hard not just today, not just next week, not just this year, but for as long as it takes to defeat the evil empire of gun confiscation? Not every generation is called to defend freedom at its moments of greatest peril. Will you take up that challenge? The future of freedom is in your hands. Thank you. We will say a few words to you about the proper